Tube broadcast, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first full overview committee. Just like to welcome you all, members and officers. So hopefully we'll have a good morning. I just want to remind members before we do start the meeting that scrutiny is a non-political process, and as members we all work together to get the best possible outcomes, not only for the council but for all of our residents. So we can just keep that in mind as we scrutinise. Thank you. Just like to start with the minutes of the last meeting held on the 13th of June 2022 for all those that were here. Show of hands. Move that. Okay. Agenda item 2 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lee replaces Councillor Ogle, Councillor Martin replaces Councillor Zadrozny, and Councillor Meakin replaces Councillor Purdue-Horan, all for this meeting only. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 is the usual, the declaration of interest by members and officers, and that's disclosable pecuniary interests. Does anyone have any? And private interests, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? None. Okay. So this morning we've got 2 main items for consideration. The first one being the budget monitoring process and the budget framework. The second one being the work programme. The first report comes from the Service Director for Finance, the Infrastructure and Improvement, and Section 151 Officer Nigel Stevenson, who is accompanied by Councillor Richard Jackson, the Cabinet Member for Finance. We've got Melanie Brooks, the Corporate Director for Adult Social Care and Health, and by Melanie we've got Colin Pettigrew, the Corporate Director for Children, Family and Cultural Services, along with Derek Higdon, the Service Director for Place and Communities. So welcome to the meeting. And I'd just like to start. So the purpose of the report is to provide an update to the overview committee on the current budget monitoring process and the budget framework for 2023-24. Hand over to Nigel.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for being invited to the meeting. The idea of the report is just to set out under the new governance arrangements in terms of how we do continue with the process of budget monitoring, which we have done under my tenure as the 151 officer for like 8 or 9 years, in terms of we've always done monthly monitoring and we've always been open and transparent in terms of that data, whether it's been through Finance Committee and now through the Cabinet Member for Finance and for Cabinet, in terms of that data is still published. And although, as an example, as the appendix is the report that went to Cabinet in August, the next monitoring report, period 4, was seen and overseen by Richard and Andre only on Monday, and that is also in the public domain. So again, that demonstrates in terms of the factors that we've been open and transparent. Set out on paragraph 3 is the timetable in terms of how we do monthly monitoring, the time that it takes to produce the monitoring information, where it goes, and how, therefore, that data is seen. And then I thought it was also important through the new governance arrangements to show how the budget framework would set out how Overview Committee will see, and we will do the report and we'll do consultation. So there'll be 2 further reports in time to Overview Committee in December, I think, and in January, which will be at the start of an update to the medium-term financial strategy, and when as Cabinet are considering a budget as it goes to full council in February, and that's what the report is setting out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Nigel. The recommendation is that Overview Committee notes the establishment processes for monitoring the budget and notes the budget framework for establishing the budget for 2022-23. Have a seconder.
Move that, Chairman.
Thank you, and open it up for questions. Any questions? Yeah, you can do. Kate.
Cheers, thank you.
Councillor Fold, sorry.
Cheers. No, that's fine, don't worry. Okay, that's fine. And we have got a number of questions for you, but the first one I would actually is going to set out in the report under item 12 about the consultation process. And what concerns me is there'll be a fair few consultations kind of going on, won't there, during the duration of the council's business. And I wonder to what extent the consultation process and any outcomes that the public are kind of raising for us in terms of concern could be reflected actually in the budget. So how flexible the budget can be. So say, for example, you know, the residents sort of make something, say, in particular that would be really helpful in terms of the cost of living crisis. And there's a budget, there needs to be a budget attached to that. How flexible is the budget going to be in terms of responding to public need and public requests?
Councillor Jackson, to pick that up. Okay.
Microphone, yeah, I think it's a process, and it's a different process for us, but it involves this committee, doesn't it? Because you've got the time table in the papers, so I think we'll make sure that the consultation is meaningful when it goes out, but also that there's time to respond to it, and that there are options. And I think as an overview committee, I mean, Boyd might have a different idea, Chairman might have a different idea, but I would have thought that's where you're going as a committee. You're going to make suggestions, proposals for change from within the original set of budget consultations.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. As an overview committee, we will ask to see the results of the consultation before everyone, and then we can bring it back to committee, so that we can actually have a look at that and pick at it and see what make it most meaningful. So we'll have a first glance at that, Kate. So, okay. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't want to get political about it at all, so I'm just here as in my role as county councillor and as portfolio holder for revenues, finance and benefits for Ashfield as well. But I've real concerns because, not contained within this report, last month the Nottinghamshire County Council projected a significant shortfall of up to 33 million in what's required to pay for fair cost of care reforms. And the council warned that it may have to cut services elsewhere without further government support. So I feel your pain, Nigel, because the government has put us in a really awkward position with not doing a fair funding review and revenue support grants. We don't know where we are with them. It's difficult to formulate a medium-term financial strategy in such bleak circumstances. The council's predicted that the cost of these care reforms, which will aim to see self-funders able to access the same rates of council pay, will result in additional costs of either 23.15 million or up to 41.57 million, depending on different modelling assumptions, but is set to only receive 8.82 million, and this leaves the council in an awkward position. I believe that scrutiny should be looking at this urgently to see how we can mitigate against this and lobby the government, the new government, for additional financial support, not only to lobby the government for additional financial support, but to have clarity on it, because as the finance officer for Ashfield, I feel like I'm playing fantasy league football, because I don't know what's coming and when it's coming. So I hope Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, who's committed to removing the national insurance contributions, which were to support 13 billion a year, were to support adult health and social care, she's talking about removing that, whereas Boris was putting it in. So we need some clarity. And our county council is in the position and needs to be in a position to get clarity on this as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. We're not onto that part of the report yet, but I'll take your question and we can have a look at it. Okay. But as for not getting political. Okay. Right. We do need clarity, yeah, but let's.
You've got some Smith.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Meakin first.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 14 reveals the council is having an additional provision of 13.3 million on top of the 4 million contingency in the base budget to cover redundancy costs, slippage or savings of unseen events. Does this include the potential rise in inflation and increase of borrowing costs and the rise in energy prices? Would the Chair agree with me on all three are not unseen? There's no doubt the finance team is doing an excellent job. However, frustrating as it that we see are still not nearing a multi-year settlement, nowhere near the positive formula changes we need for a fair funding review, nowhere near to knowing what future changes to the business rate system will look like, or for the matter, unclear on the financial support we'll get from the employers' payoff to support that for energy and fuel inflation. If broken promises, false economy and certain certainty lies worth a pound, it is true that the financial worries of this council would be over.
I think we can pick a question out of that somewhere, but it's a bit more of a speech, wasn't it? And we're not being political, once again. Nigel, do you want to pick that up? Yeah. Can you turn your mic off, please?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
They're all valid points. I don't think they're necessarily relevant to what we're talking about, which is around the process we're doing. I think there is those points, though, will be relevant at the time, which I think probably will be the overview committee when you look at the consultation process, when we update the medium-term financial strategy, and also probably when we overview committee have another look at it in January. And again, some of those points will, I'm hoping, will become a little bit clearer, particularly around energy quite soon, in terms of that will give us a little bit more certainty in terms of what the impact of that will be.
Councillor Creamer,
Thank you,
sorry.
Chair. Just going to Appendix 1 and the actual budget forecast capital receipts. Item 38, the number and size of large receipts, etc. And it does say that within 3 years, and we're using that to actually protect the cost of borrowing on the revenue budget. But I'm just wondering exactly how accurate these forecasts are, being as actual state of the economy at the moment. Do these actually need looking at now? And how will it actually affect the capital receipts? And actually knocking on as well, if it affects the capital receipts, how flexible is the current policy on item 39 on the impact of the cost of borrowing on the revenue budget? So it could actually be a double hit, and I'm not quite sure how accurate the forecast would be at this moment in time because everything is in such fluid state. So do we need to continue to look at that on a weekly, daily basis almost? How accurate do we think it is for going into the future?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Richard or Nigel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Both?
we can both answer this. I mean, we have to put a figure in there. And the property market is volatile, it always is. I think that is the best estimate there is at the moment, and it's constantly, Keith's at the back there, he'll tell you it's constantly under review. Most of the capital receipts you're talking about are from property, and it's at the moment it's proven buoyant, and the figures we're achieving are greater than previously expected. If anybody knows exactly what the property market's going to do over the 6 months, I suspect they'd be earning a fortune somewhere else, Jim.
Was just a point of how closely and how continuously are we looking at it? So thank you.
Yeah. If I may, Chairman, I would echo what Councillor Jackson has just said in terms of the capital receipts are monitored quite closely between the property colleagues and finance colleagues and overseen by Councillor Girling. So that's really good, and that's why I think the forecast was almost changed at the beginning of the forecasting period 2 in terms of we anticipated we were going to get more capital receipts in this year. So I've got confidence in 22-23. Obviously, as you go further down the line, you get a little less confident, and we will obviously review it, and that's what colleagues do both in the department and under Councillor Girling's good oversight. In terms of the matter, in terms of you mentioned there about the impact on the revenue budget, what we've tried to do, and the strategy changed a year ago, was to try and avoid borrowing. And that strategy, as you know, has been very successful because last year, as we started the year, we were thinking we were going to be borrowing another 70 million to actually both deal with cash and with investment. As it turned out, we didn't make any borrowing at all. In fact, we made a repayment of debt. And that is therefore saving us both in terms of the MRP calculation and interest. And it's a small element that we expect to borrow. And I think if the capital receipts come in as we anticipate, then I don't anticipate we will be having any borrowing again this year, which is all good governance of our budget as we go into the next budget cycle. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Nigel. I've got Councillor Smith signalled to speak, but I'm going to bring Councillor Girling in just to add a bit more value to that because that's what we're we're doing. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I can echo what Nigel said about the capital receipts. It's looking quite healthy at the moment because the market is quite buoyant. One of the problems we do have, however, is some of the districts and boroughs are dragging their feet in terms of the process going through the planning applications. Yeah, and we're having to sort of try and push the districts and boroughs to get on with that, because if they don't, that is going to affect our capital receipts, because, you know, planning applications do take a lot number of time. For example, we've got 2 or 3 in the Ashfield area where we're trying to ask them to make a decision whether or not we can go ahead with it. So it's you know, it's not a straightforward thing. You need the support of our partners as well to process our applications, so we get those capital receipts which will go into the pot to be able to do the things that we know we need to do and actually fill the black hole.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to be fair, you have the same conversation with all of the districts and boroughs, don't you? And it's just some that...
Absolutely, and some of them work really closely with us, and we're pushing them through, and it's going through smoothly. Others less cooperative, shall we say.
All right. But as long as you have the same with all of them. Councillor Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want, if I understood Councillor Martin's question correctly, and not to be political, obviously, I just want to reassure him that despite the government under the Liz Truss due to cut national insurance, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care was on TV this morning and said that government spending is committed to what it was before, and that will get out of general taxation rather than national insurance increase. So everything this council's doing, they can keep doing with that in mind, that the funding is coming down the track.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you. Nigel, as you know, later on in the papers, we're going to consider some of the areas that we're going to scrutiny further, and one of those is consultation process. So, in reality, the consultation process for the budget has come a little bit sooner than what we'd probably had the opportunity to look at the whole of the process. I wondered if you could just give us a little bit of an idea of what the consultation process is going to be and will take place for the budget this time, and how that's going to be carried out, what format, and just give an indication for us, and where we can add value as overview, where we can add value to that scrutiny process.
Very good questions, and being honest, we haven't yet formulated what that consultation process is going to be. So slightly, I'm not quite sure if it's slightly frustrating for you or slightly out of timing in terms of where this report is coming to you. So, and also because it's through the new governance arrangements, it'll be the first time that we'll do that through that consultation round. So I'll be hopefully seeking, I'm sure colleagues will be, in terms of support, in terms of ideas, in terms of that consultation will progress. But I'm happy to come back. Well, it will be colleagues in the communications department, hopefully to come back at some stage in terms of how that communication programme or process will take place. So frustrating, I'm sure, in terms of the answer, in terms of today, I don't know what that consultation will look like.
Thank you. I mean, clearly it says in the paperwork it's going to start on the 17th of November. Just wondered what then, I mean, can't remember when the next committee is, to be honest, whether there is one prior to that and whether there's an opportunity for you to bring that at that. If not, is it something that the actual process could actually be sent out to members so that we get an indication of what the process is, where the meetings are going to take place? I mean, I'm sure some members may want to, if you're talking to the business community, and we're going to say have an opportunity to formulate some suggestions, then perhaps it might be worth us having an opportunity to sort of listen to what the business community have got to say as well, you know. So it's just about how we can, as I say, add value to the process and also inform ourselves when we're coming to make suggestions around the budget.
Can I thank Councillor Guilfoyle? I think that'd be brilliant, an excellent idea and very helpful, and I think that's what we'll take up, your offer of support for the review committee in terms of helping us shape that. That'd be really kind of you.
always come up with very helpful solution and excellent ideas. My group tells me that regularly.
If I could just come back in, I think probably the timescales for this year's budget round consultations are getting tight. It might, I'm not telling you how to run your committee, Chairman, but it might be a really good piece of scrutiny work to take several months to come up with, you know, best practice around the country where engagement's really good, where it's made a difference to the budget, and where members of the public really feel that they've had a proper say. Because, you know, nobody's perfect, and I wouldn't pretend that past consultations have been absolutely perfect or got the engagement that we'd all like to see. So it might be it would be useful to me, but it might be something you'd want to consider as an ongoing piece of work to come back to sort of next year's budget.
Yeah, well,
It's on the
agree.
agenda.
It's on. Definitely agree with you there, Councillor Jackson. For the 1st of December, we've got the budget development for 23-24, so that will enable all members to feed into the development of the council's budget. So I'd encourage all members of all groups to participate in that. It'd be great. But as you've already said, it is a bit tight this year. Okay. Are there any other questions? I have one. Whilst the council is somewhat protected from immediate inflation on the direct energy costs, can I ask what this somewhat protected is, and how does the advanced purchasing agreement and how long the contracts are, and if you want to expand on those. Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's in the report just to reassure people, really, that we are, as you say, somewhat protected. That's the words that are used in there, because we've got all of our energy contracts are long-term and at fixed price. But obviously, they're come round to be renewed, and we'll know, pending what government have got to say, I think tomorrow, on energy price cap, because at the moment we're not covered by any price cap on that. It's likely to be a much more expensive process when it comes to renewing those contracts. We've actually got officers trawling through the contracts right now to come back to me with a report, which I'm very happy to share with you, with the committee. There may be some commercial sensitivities within it, but we'll deal with that. Just so that we get a really clear picture on what size contracts there are, how many there are, exactly when they're coming up for renewal. And again, depending exactly on what sort of announcements are made in the next few days by central government, what likely renewal costs are when those contracts come up for renewal. I don't know if Nigel's got anything to add on the technicalities of the deals.
No, I don't know if Derek had any further info, but you're quite right, Chairman. In terms of what we will do is, you've asked for that report. We also have to remember that it's a fluctuating position. So pending what decisions are made or announcements are made tomorrow, if we were going for a position where there wasn't any announcement happening, it's like today's assumptions in terms of what's going to happen in the future will be different to tomorrow. So that's the bit that we have to remember in terms of the fluidity, in terms of what's happening around the pricing for fuel, gas and electric. But we also have to remember to the side there that it's also cost of the running cost in terms of fuel costs for both. So it's not just about buildings and street lighting, but it's also about energy costs in terms of petrol thingy. But for the moment, we'll concentrate on the aspects in terms of buildings and street lighting.
I'd just like to come in and this is the overview committee, and we're looking at those strategic issues for the council and trying to help that process and scrutinise it. And I think that the point there is whether or not we're confident or not that Nottinghamshire County Council does have the systems and processes in place to be able to understand, react to and plan for all those things that are happening outside in the big world, and the cost of living crisis, energy and everything else. And I feel confident from listening to the officers and to the Cabinet member today that there are all those things happening in the background that will mean that we will get the best we can in the circumstances, and hope that it will give a good result for our residents and their council tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Yep. So, no further questions. We'd like to thank Nigel and Councillor Jackson. Okay, so the budget monitoring process and budget framework, that the report be noted. Noted. Okay. All happy? and that members of the Overview Committee receive a briefing on the proposed public consultation on the 2023-24 budget in advance of the start of the consultation process period in order to feed into the development of the consultation. And then, all happy with number 2? Yep. And at number 3, that members of the Overview Committee receive a briefing on the budget consultation responses once the consultation has closed. Okay. All in favour? Good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. The second report seeks the committee's approval for Overview Committee's work programme alongside the work programmes of the 3 select committees. There may be some queries around why some items that were suggested for inclusion of the Overview work programme have not been included. We're going to discuss that now. Okay, and yeah, just
You're going to move the work programme as Dave?
well, I'll move the work programme as a recommendation. A second.
Yeah, seconded.
Okay, thank you. And open it up. Councillor Fole.
Yes, thank you. I mean, clearly there's an awful lot of work here, and I do understand that, you know, we've got to be proper. If we're going to do it properly, it's going to take a while. But our big concern is that of priorities. I mean, we wanted cost of living to be up there and first. And there just doesn't seem to be any sense of urgency to kind of mitigate what are going to be kind of pretty awful winter for an awful lot of people. It really kind of worries us. And I do understand that there's some work going on behind the scenes by officers actually just trying to kind of do some sort of scoping exercise. But this needs political leadership now. We need to commit ourselves to actually helping good people and the businesses and stakeholders in the voluntary sector of Nottinghamshire and just kind of shift it off the first. It is really concerning to us that there is no sense of urgency to tackle this cost of living crisis, which is really, I say, really worrying. And there's other things as well in terms of priorities that we are really concerned about. I mean, adult social care reform, that's not even got a date next to it. I mean, that's going to be kind of very expensive and really important. If we're going to deliver services to people in real need, we need to kind of be looking at that now. And the recruitment and retention of staff, that's shifted to next spring. And I understand the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee has been shifted as well, so that's not even going to be looked at until I think it's November. Sorry, October, sorry. And I see, and you've got the property review and the budget at the top of the list. It really just feels as if you're putting property before people, and it's a real worry for us. I just think, you know, if we're going to find real ways of helping residents and businesses, first off, there might be a cost to the budget. So again, we might have to kind of change the budget as a result of it. And I think we need to listen to real people about this and find out what, you know, really what they're thinking and feeling. So the other thing I was going to raise was the council consultation process, which is not until May next year. And again, how can members get involved and how meaningful is it got to be? I mean, just to kind of do a consultation online. I know last time you did try harder and you did put an awful lot of letters out there. But again, the response was poor. It was just low thousands. You know, it was 830,000 people in this county. So I just feel as if we need to kind of really find out what people are thinking of feeling at this really difficult time and reflect that in our priorities and in our budget. And it doesn't feel as if that's happening at the moment. I mean, nobody, to go to the property portfolio, nobody cares where we have our arguments, where we have a scrutiny committee, where the council chamber is. Nobody cares about top weekend. They want to know actually whether or not they're going to be able to get through this winter without going into huge debt. Yeah, I rant, but there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. The cost of living, to scrutinise that, we want to spend more time on it. So rest assured, there is work going on at the moment. We are preparing. The building needed to be done. So a review of our buildings. So we're reviewing all of our buildings, parks, leases, what we own, what we don't own. So it's fit for purpose. But that's going to be a much quicker review than the cost of living. It's not that it was prioritised that way. It's the cost of living. It's going to take such a lot longer. It's a much longer piece of work. So rest assured it is being done.
I'm not saying that there aren't other work streams going on and you can't kind of do things kind of, you can't just, not just one thing and then moving to another. What I want to see is a proper discussion in this chamber and some political leadership about what our priorities are. And that's really not reflected in the work programme, in my view.
Okay.
Do you want to just ask Mel just to say why adult social care reform's not got a date on it?
Okay. Melanie, can I bring you in for the adult social care reform and just explain why it hasn't got a date on it as yet?
Okay, so adult social care reform has a bundle of 9 different pieces of legislative change. So we have the fair cost of care exercise, which was referenced earlier by Councillor Martin. So currently the Department of Health is reviewing its guidance in the wake of the Trailblazers reporting their early findings. So we don't yet have any guidance as to when that will be implemented, but departmental readiness is taking place. And in fact, Councillor Quigley is receiving a report to Adult Social Care Select Committee about that next week, so our readiness for that piece of work. Another piece of work is our readiness for inspection, so inspection under the Care Quality Commission. So that departmental work is being undertaken, and that's we're going to be possibly inspected from March 2023 to 2026 is the current schedule. So there's I believe that we're scheduled to come to overview and scrutiny committee before that date. Another piece of the legislative change is the charging reform. So currently we're waiting for the Department of Health to review the guidance on the charging reform. The first piece of that legislation comes into being into April next year. So I believe we're coming to scrutiny to report on that. Adult Social Care Select Committee scrutiny, our readiness for that in due course. The other piece of legislative change are Liberty Protection Safeguards, Mental Health Act reform, and again we were scheduled in for the Adult Social Care Select Committee to report on our implementation of those legislative changes. But currently there is, with the change of health minister, so as a health minister announced last night, we are waiting for the Department of Health to get their directions to the priorities and focus. So I'm expecting there to be a bit of a change in the way that social care reform is ordered, if that's helpful.
Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. It's really strange. They want us to do things quicker. What about tomorrow? What about the announcement tomorrow that's probably going to be made by the Prime Minister that's going to announce one of the largest spending to help the issue that we're in with the cost of living crisis? You can't really get any quicker than tomorrow. This council is very restricted in what we can do. We take the lead from national government. They have the massive amount of spending. They make national decisions. We, to a certain extent, follow suit. They make the policies and we see what we can do locally. This council, over the past year I've been a councillor, has made so many steps and support for our residents. And it's about not rushing. We can rush and talk about until we're blue in the face. Doesn't mean we get anywhere. It's about doing it properly. It's about following the process and about making sure when we are discussing things, because our time is limited in this committee, that we are doing the best we can to help our residents. And I really do look, not being political, but I really look forward to the Conservative Prime Minister tomorrow announcing the steps that she will be making. Less than 48 hours in position, she will be making some major steps that will help people locally. And I welcome that, and I look forward to seeing what that will be, but not being political.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I can understand the time constraints on the property review, and I understand that. And I hope you're accounting, you're going to be scrutinising the cost escalations of that programme, because that's going to be a real major factor in that. Ethically, it doesn't look right on the paperwork, because obviously the cost of living crisis is the major thing on everybody's lips in the on the doorstep nowadays. Yeah, and it's about time. It's not before time that we didn't have an announcement from government, not being political about it, but it is about time we had some direction, because like I said earlier about Nigel's is doing a great job under very difficult circumstances, because I mean, Michael Gove said we were going to have a 2-year settlement. Is that still there? Has that gone? Where are we? Fluid is the right word, Nigel. Very fluid. You know, and it's about time we got some clarity from the government about how we're going to operate with a medium-term financial strategy supported by the government. The Social Care Reform Act, just passed now, the white paper or whatever it is going to put a great burden on this council, and it needs to be scrutinised closely, because it could add up to over 100 million to the council's budget, and that needs to be monitored right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So just to go back to that, should we do one review at a time? So the property review will be much quicker than the cost of living. The preparation work for the cost of living review is underway, and as soon as the review for the property is over, commence immediately. Okay, but the preparation work is underway now. Thank you. Councillor Creamer.
Thank you, Chair. Others have mentioned the the cost of living crisis and other crises we're going through, and it does seem to be a year of several different crises. I just want to mention one on the place. 15th of March is actually on climate change, a progress report. Given what's happening this year, what's happening in Pakistan at the moment, and the urgency of it, could that be brought forward as to what we're actually planning to do, rather than just a report back then? And on the same committee on the 15th of March, the electric vehicles charging infrastructure, yes, that's a report back, but we've only just received the money. And although I've looked through it, I can't see anywhere where they're actually going to say what is actually being done, where it's being done, etc. So it looks like a report back after it's done again, which I know that's part of the role of scrutiny, but also part is to actually make sure it's done in the first place. So it just seems to me that leaving everything till the 15th of March next year seems to be a bit late within the crisis we're in and the positive money we've had from the government for actually electrical vehicle charging. So that's just a criticism of timing rather than actually things.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Smith? No?
Yeah.
Linda, will come in.
Yeah, just on the responses and the impact. Yeah, tomorrow, you know, decisions are going to be made that will affect all of us and may relieve some of the burden across the piece. One of the issues that's not really been managed is the impact on businesses. You know, most people are saying that, you know, that we're looking, the government are directly looking and being open about what they can do for individuals, but businesses has not really been mentioned. So I welcome what we can get from that. My personal view is, and as you know, when we're doing the agenda, you know, my personal view is that I would hope that we could set up a task and finish group that could look at this very quickly, because there are things like silly things. I mean, it's not silly in reality. Where the government are saying we can open our libraries, etc., and for people for hubs, for warm hubs. As my colleague says, well, that's fine, but some of the libraries in their areas only open 3 days a week. That may be a consideration that we need to look at to say, do we open them 5? Do we open them 7? And I think some of that could be worked through a scrutiny group to look at some of those issues, but also to look at the local picture as well. You know, there's I tried to look at myself and say, right, what is the impact? You know, because there's an impact on the individuals, there's impact on businesses, there's impact on schools and what the county council's got, and it's about drawing all those together, because at the end of the day, it could have an impact on the budget, ultimately. And if we don't know what's going off on the ground, and different areas have got different things in place, we've still got food banks that are running. CABs telling me, you know, locally that they're inundated with people with concerns about not just the current debt that they've got, but also the impact that debt is now going to be having because of the interest rates that have gone up. And people who were in positions who thought they were pretty well off are now very concerned about their future. So yeah, I accept that there's going to be an announcement tomorrow, but I would hope that we could be fleet on our feet and sort of have a task and finish group set up where we can meet very quickly and start not just officer scoping it, but we could help in that scope as well. So I just think that that's how important it is, because ultimately there will be impacts, as well as I say, for the budget. And I don't think that the government will resolve all the issues, because some of those actually go down to some minor detail and locality issues.
Thank you, Glenn. Any other questions? I just want to remind members that the work programme will be considered at each meeting. It's living, organic, so we can ensure that it remains focused and relevant at the time. Some pieces of work we can get done in a month, 2 months. Some may take longer, 18 months, Martin? Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but they will take longer, and because we need to do it properly, so it does add the benefit. So once this work programme has been approved today, that any further suggestions for items should be sent to myself or my Vice Chair Glyn and Senior Scrutiny Officer Martin. So if you do think of anything, they'd be open for consultation and take place with officers and cabinet members before we agree to include or reject them for the item for the work programme. This can be done at any time. Members don't have to wait for committee meetings to raise any potential items for the plan. Okay, so just keep that in your forefront. Yeah, keep that in your mind. And the forward plan, remind members that they should also be regularly reviewing the forward plan of key decisions. The forward plan contains details of key decisions to be taken by the Cabinet members, chief officers and any committees of Cabinet, including the City of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Economic Prosperity Committee. It does not include decisions to be taken by full council or any of the other council's other non-executive committees. So, if members of the committee wish to examine any of the key decisions as detailed in the forward plan, consideration would need to be given as to how this could be accommodated in the work programme, in consultation with relevant cabinet members and senior officers, subject to the required approval by the chairman of the overview committee, myself. So, thank you. And we'll move to the recommendations. So the first recommendation was that the overview committee work programme be approved. See, show of hands. That's unanimous, thank you. That the Adult Social Care and Public Health Select Committee work programme be approved. That the Children and Young People's Services Select Committee work programme be approved. That the Place Select Committee work programme be approved. And that committee members make any further suggestions for consideration by the chairman and vice chairman for inclusion on the overview work programme in the consultation with relevant cabinet members and senior officers, subject to the required approval by the chairman of overview committee. Thank you. So that brings us to I'd just like to remind members, obviously we've got all these reviews on the work programme. Just be conscious of which ones you'd like to be part of. So
just ask for members,
just
volunteers for the buildings and that.
Yeah, so the first one, obviously the buildings review. I'd like members to nominate themselves, volunteer to be on that work programme. So look forward to hearing from you. No, you don't. No. So if you can go back to your group. You could, yeah. And the same, Councillor Martin, Councillor Meakin, you can discuss with your group. Likewise, we will, and then we'll formulate.
For clarification, Chairman, what's the size of the group?
We were looking at, was it 7?
Probably put up like 6 to 8.
6, well, I said about 7, but 6 to 8. Okay.
7 is between 6 and 8, isn't it?
Yeah, you're 6 and 8. Right, yeah. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.